Welcome to DAX Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of DAX Machina. Joining me in the house tonight, we have Robbie Rip Rain, Steve Wildman Monrotis. Doc has the night off. Him and his little lady are going out for dinner, so we won't have Doc tonight. And Miss Neoma Finn is in the house tonight, rocking an awesome purple hat. And she's going to be joining us tonight so we can talk about werewolves, Dogman, and the Gugwe. Miss Neoma, how are you doing?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I was, to quote Doc, I'm finer than frog hair split four ways.
Well, I'm so fine I can't hardly stand myself.
Robbie, how you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Steve, you doing all right tonight, buddy?
I have not yet begun to defile myself, sir.
That's right. It is early. So we lost Steve already.
That didn't take long.
Yeah, but he defiled himself pretty quick.
Yeah, that didn't take long.
No,
There
I just have I'm sharing office space with a shy lady who didn't want to walk in front of the camera. So
I was like, what, did we just lose Steve?
you could at least wave at a time. Oh, there she goes. She's waving.
Hey, Rachel.
Right. Yeah, no, I cut the camera just as I said I've not yet begun to defile myself, and they decided I've defiled myself early.
He had not yet begun to defile himself, but let's do it right now.
Let's do it right now.
He may not have begun, but when he did,
Like a firecracker.
That's right.
You know, I drink too much of this Prohibition era stuff. I might.
I gotta take my
Here's a little
glasses
stout.
off and see.
It is a wee stout. You know, you got to drink it quick before it dissolves the glass.
Well, Miss Neoma, before we get started on the main subject, I wanted to try to pick your brain and get a little bit of an update. Have you had any more weird noises around your house?
Whew. I wait and I listen for the dogs to go off because I know that if the dogs go off, things are going to get crazy out there. And the other night they did, and I thought, I'm going to take my phone out there and I'm going to record. And I got as far as the front door. I just could not open it.
Well,
I haven't had any. Hi, Pumpy. Hi, puppy. I haven't had any. I haven't had any knocking or anything like that. I need to try. Brad, my husband, and I both agree that we need to try to get it recorded ourselves, so that we can compare it, because I think that I'm in so much shock that even anything that even remotely sounds like it, I curl up into a ball and suck my thumb. And he keeps saying, no, that didn't really sound like it. No, that didn't really sound like it. And then I keep playing things for him, and I'm to the point where, no, you're just in denial.
well, I know the night we had Eli on and he played that sound, it affected you pretty markedly.
I was not prepared for that. What had happened was I sit here and I crochet, which is why I miss half the hellos to me. By the way, everybody that's in chat, if you say hello to me and I don't respond back, it's probably because I'm looking down at my crochet work. And I was only about half listening, and all of a sudden that went off, and I thought, okay, I'm done. I can't do this. And I shed a few tears. It's interesting. What really surprised me, we all know probably, I don't know if I ever told my Bigfoot story on your show, but it happened years and years and years ago. And I haven't cried over the Bigfoot story in probably 20 years. Well, I was on another friend of mine was doing a live stream, and his guest got their time mixed up, and he found himself on the screen alone. And so I offered to, I said, oh, just send me a link. I'll come on. And in the course of the conversation, he wanted me to tell my encounter story. And I couldn't get through it without crying. And I think it's because my nerves from what happened out here on the front porch that night are still so raw that everything involving cryptids right now just shoots through me like a razor blade, So But I almost got out the front door thinking, something might happen. I need to get it recorded. But, that big yellow streak running down my back went out. So
No, some people would call that good sense. Those of us that do go out and poke the bear probably ain't the brightest of fellas for doing it.
Well, I used to be one of those people. I think, you poke the bear till it bites you, and then pretty soon you're thinking, yeah, I might leave that bear alone for a while.
Well, it's a
we go out
paraphrase
and see if we can find one, and Steve just marks his territory in the middle of theirs.
I was going to say, to paraphrase a friend of mine, there's old cryptid hunters and bold cryptid hunters, but you don't find old and bold cryptid hunters.
Papa Bear, you need to come down and record it for me. He was staying with me a couple of years ago, and there was some, I don't remember what we heard out back, but he smokes, and we don't smoke in the house. And so he was standing out back smoking, and I went out to talk to him, and I think we heard maybe some howling or something. Or anyway, he's my pop. For anybody who doesn't know, Papa Bear is my oldest son, and all I wanted to do was pick that 6'4" tall man up and carry him in the house and protect him, because he became my baby instantly. When
your kids always will be, no matter how old they get.
So I think he's only 6
about your crocheting, Neoma, because for a while there I was thinking you were having little transient ischemic attacks. How's you doing?
No, I'm looking down at my crochet work. But I mean, I'm not lying. I really am. I am crocheting this. So you see, I really am doing something. I'm not totally useless. Oh, my hat's falling off.
Making a comfy blanket for your new pet Bigfoot that's hanging around.
Bite me.
Everybody needs a
I appreciate it.
He doesn't know what to do now. He can see everything right now. Got a haircut, and the poor little guy's actually got eyes again.
Oh no! I mean, oh yay!
Well, it's just like in amazement, like everything is so bright.
There's a world out there. I can see. I can see.
I can see.
Oh shoot!
Griff says, "Make friends with the boogers, Neoma. Crochet them a scarf."
I'll let him have this one.
Be all stylish, sashaying across the yard, putting the sass and Sasquatch.
I can have. Give him my hat. Yeah, a
They come at you. Just throw it at them as you run away. They'll pick it up. You you just run to safety.
Sure. I'll let them wear my hat. I'll let them have my scarf. They can have all my Afghans and blankets. As long as they don't take me, I'm good with that. I prefer to remain here. Anyway.
Travis Drum, who's celebrating 15 months of membership, which is awesome. Thank you, dude. Says, so glad to have Neoma back on the show.
Always feels like being home.
Well, you're always welcome. And it is home. You were a big part of this channel.
I always enjoy being here.
Well, we enjoy having you. So, shall we kick the tires and light the fires and start this topic off?
Yeah, we shall.
I think the first place I would like to talk about when we start talking about Dogman and creatures of that ilk is Werewolf Springs. Neoma, that's right in your neck of the woods. And would you give us a little history of Werewolf Springs?
First, I want to say that for those who don't know, in the middle of October, they're having a Wild Man convention at Montgomery Bell State Park, which is the home of Werewolf Springs. And I will tell you a little bit about it. Werewolf Springs is the name that is given, or nickname that was given to a place that is actually called Hall Spring. It was at one time on the farm of the Hall family, and it is on the southernmost part of the park. One of the interesting things about Montgomery Bell Park is that it's not a typical, it's definitely not an LBL type place. Incredibly well groomed, 3 very nice lakes, swimming beach, golf course, really nice convention center. It is not what you would think of. It's definitely not in the area of wilderness or wild things. But back in the 1800s, shortly after the Civil War, it was a little bit different story. And what was the crayons thing?
The crayons melt.
Anyway, shortly after the Civil War, there was a farmer who was headed home. He was headed east from, I believe, I assume Burns, which is where it's at, toward Nashville. And they got right the road, and I can't remember the name of that road right now. But the highway, it's a highway now, but at that time it was just a dirt road. They got right close to that spring, and they began to hear something in the woods around them. And it sounded like they couldn't tell what it was. They thought, well, it sounds like it's on 2 feet, so it might be bandits. They began to think, well, it sounds like an animal, so maybe it's a cougar, but it sounds like it's on 2 feet. They couldn't quite figure out what it was, so they kept going a little faster and a little faster, trying to get away from it. But as fast as they went, it kept up with them, and to the point that they knew that it couldn't be a man because the man wouldn't be able to keep up with them. Well, eventually panic set in, and the farmer jumped off the wagon one way, and his servant jumped off the wagon the other way, and they ran in 2 different directions, and the farmer hid under the bushes, and as he was cowering under the bushes, he listened while something ripped his servant to pieces. He heard the screaming and the crying and the begging for mercy, but there was not anything he could do because he knew he had no way to defend himself or the servant against whatever was out there. Well, the farmer laid there until daylight, and he got up and he went looking for his servant, and he never found so much as a shred of clothes. The servant was gone. And so he went to the town and reported it, and they all decided to get together and do a posse, and they were going to find this thing that made a howling noise. They had learned that it howled. There were other people that were reporting it. They were describing something that sounded an awful lot like a werewolf. And so they decided to get together a posse, and they went down to the clearing by the spring, and they took a goat and they staked it out, and they all got around this clearing. And I would like to think that they were not firing directly at each other, but who knows? But they got around the spring. They doused all of their lights, nothing but moonlight to show them the way. Clouds drifting over the moon, clouds coming, clearing away from the moon. They're getting bits and pieces, and they can hear the goat. And sometimes when there are no clouds on the moon, they can see the goat. And all of a sudden, they hear something coming. And just as the cloud crossed over the moon, whatever it was got into the clearing, and they could hear the goat begin to scream. Well, the lights came, or the cloud went away, and they all began to fire and fire and fire. And every one of them emptied their rifle or their whatever into this, to whatever this was. And somebody lit his lantern, and the goat was gone. The thing they were firing at was gone. And I believe at least one, if not 2 or 3 of the members of the posse were gone, never to be seen again.
That's kind of terrifying.
That is really terrifying.
I will say one thing is how we know that didn't happen in Arkansas, because a staked down goat would have been in mortal danger.
I wonder if that's where they got the idea from.
They didn't put lipstick on it, DA.
Yeah, it would have started screaming before you heard the howling.
I wonder if they got that story or got the idea for that scene in the new remake of the Wolfman from that story, because that's exactly what they did in that movie.
Could be.
And that scene was nowhere in the original movie about them staking a goat and circling around. So I wonder if wonder if they read that and got that idea and put that in
They
there.
probably were researching werewolf tales and came across this one from Werewolf Springs because it's an easy one to find when you start Googling werewolf.
Because when you told that the first
not-
time, Neoma, I was thinking about that, and I don't think I said anything then, but it's just that's almost identical to what they did in the movie.
I'm sure that that's probably where they got it from. Interestingly enough, with all of this going on, there was a big game hunter, and all of this happened over a period of years. It didn't all happen at the same time. But there was a big game hunter that learned about this legend, and he decided that there was nothing he couldn't hunt. And he decided to come to Burns, Tennessee, and Dixon, or Montgomery Bell is sort of surrounded by different towns, but I believe the address is Burns. And he was going to hunt this thing down and get rid of it for these people. So he got a cabin not too far from the spring. And for about a week, he decided he was going to give it a week to hunt this thing down. And the first 3 days or so, nothing. He went out during the day. He tracked. He didn't find anything. In the evening, he would sit in his window and he would watch out towards the spring, and nothing happened. Until one night, he was sitting there looking out, and he saw it coming, and he saw it walk into the clearing. And of course, he took aim and he fired it at it, and he hit it. He was sure he hit it, but all it did was make it angry. And it turned on him, and it came to the cabin. And as it was coming to the cabin, he knew he was in a world of trouble. This thing is just like coming at the cabin, angry. And so he did what he thought the only thing he could do, because it only had one door, and that's he climbed up into the rafters. And he hung out in the rafters up there the entire night as this thing ripped off the door and stood underneath him and jumped up, kept jumping up, trying to grab at him. And every now and then he'd get a shot off at it, but no matter how many times he hit it, it just wasn't dying. And he got down to 2 bullets, and he knew the last one was going to be for himself. And he had was just about ready to take aim with that second to last one, when the sun broke over the horizon and the thing left. And he waited until the sun was fully up, grabbed his stuff, left that cabin, and said, "You guys can have this. I ain't going to kill it." And he left there and found out the hard way that there are animals he couldn't kill. The weird thing about Werewolf Springs is there are 3 lakes in the park. And around the southwestern part of the westernmost lake of the 3, there's a lot of caves in those cliffs up there.
Mm-hmm.
And they have found bones, big animal bones in those caves. And they found human bones in those caves. Now, the animal bones they can explain, because a lot of times farmers would use those caves to dump big livestock, that they didn't want stinking up. But they can't explain the human bones. And they have found...
It's a little tougher to explain.
So, and then the other story that I know about that place, which just breaks my heart, is there was a girl living there, and this was before it was a park. I believe it was still the Hall family farm. I could be wrong. I actually had somebody comment on my channel who was a member of the Hall family, and I reached out to him and told him to email me, but I don't think they ever did. But the little girl was sent out to the spring to draw water, and when she didn't come back, they went looking for her, and all they found was the bucket by the spring, and she was never found again. And I that one that one's really sad for me. So,
when we start looking at the missing 411, we see a lot of cases where kids just disappeared without a trace.
Yeah. Kids are an easy target for predators of all kinds.
Very true.
Yep.
So, those are my Werewolf Springs stories. And from what I understand,
they're still having sightings even today, though.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. From what I understand, they haven't stopped having sightings there. They still have sightings. People will be walking through the woods there. And those are some really nice trails. We're not talking rugged, walk through the weeds and cut your way through the brush. These are very well maintained trails. And they'll be walking out there even today, and they'll hear strange howling and rustling in the woods around them. And so it is still an active place. If you're going to, if you want a place to search that's not going to require, and I don't know, a black belt in hiking, that might be the place to start. So, and of course, that's right down the road from White Bluff, and they have the White Bluff Screamer there. And a lot of people describe that as being either a white Bigfoot or a white Dogman.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Jack Mack says, is the only difference between werewolf and dogman that wolves change and dogmen stay in dog form? We're not 100% sure on that. There's a lot of overlap when it comes to these stories. In fact, before the mid-90s, the word dogman just didn't exist. It was coined by a DJ who wrote a song about the Michigan Dogman. Before then, pretty much anything that was a wolf-type creature was either called a wolf man or a werewolf. So where the line differentiates, I'm not 100% sure. According to the lore, werewolves were able to change form, but I really don't think Dogman does. So that may be what separates the two.
Well, there's some legends, and Neoma, you correct me if I'm wrong, but some werewolf legends state that the longer they're cursed, for lack of a better term, the more times they turn. Usually, like the movie Wolf kind of dealt in it with Jack Nicholson, is the more you turn, the less of your human side is left, until eventually there's nothing left but the wolf.
True. I've heard that. Also, there are a lot of ways to actually become a werewolf. Sorry, I have to say this. I'm a fan of the TV show Friends, and one time Ross was doing this, and Joey said, "Ross, I don't really know what this means." And then later he said, "Sorry." So now when I do this, I think bad things. But anyway, I digress. There are a lot of ways to become a werewolf. There's they say that you can put a salve on. There's a coat you can put on. There's a belt you can put on. Being bit by a werewolf. But I'm more in the camp.
Out of a wolf print. Some of those say just drinking the water. Some of them say it has to be on the full moon. I mean, there's, like you said, there's 101 different ways that.
But I'm in the camp that I think that there were a lot of people in history who were psychologically convinced that they were wolves and werewolves. But I personally believe that a lot of those people may have been tortured into that belief by ignorance.
Those Salem witch trials, a lot of those confessions, you're going to admit to anything to get somebody, to stop from, stoning you with big rocks or setting you on fire.
Right. Yeah, or hanging you or drowning you. Yeah.
Peter Stutt was tortured for what? A day or more until he finally admitted he was a werewolf. Then they killed him.
Yeah, and I believe he was one that believed he had a belt. That,
there was another young boy who claimed to be a werewolf somewhere in France, I think, but they knew that something was wrong with him mentally, and so they didn't kill him when he admitted it. They just put him in a monastery for the rest of his life.
Yes.
I'm going to move that around like this. I know it cuts down on the amount of screen, but it also keeps the questions from covering people's faces. That one guy says, "What's a dire wolf?" A dire wolf was during megafauna. It was a species of canid, but it was more closely related to a modern fox than it is to a wolf. They didn't really look that much like wolves, but they were massive, far bigger than a modern wolf, probably in the 400 to 500 pound range. Some of the intact skeletons they found in the La Brea tar pits out in California have shown a very large species of canid, but they didn't really resemble modern wolves all that much.
Sorry, guys, I dropped my glasses.
Still wouldn't want to run into one of those.
No, it would probably still do you an injury.
Don't what is the word I'm looking for? Fossil evidence of direwolves prove that they have kind of an interesting pelvic system, though?
I don't know that much about the fossils of direwolves. I would take your word for that, though.
Well,
I
I've
could-
seen a reconstruction of one at the Field Museum in Chicago. But it had fur or whatever on it.
Someone
Yeah.
commented that the direwolf's closest living relative is the jackal. And I can kind of see that, but the images I've seen of direwolves, their snout was much more blunt, like a mastiff, more than a wolf.
I don't know. I go back and forth on the direwolf theory about it being related to the Dogman. There's dogmen who look like jackals, so
True.
it's interesting to think about. Well, there's a video on YouTube about direwolves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's several, but I always like to try and watch them, catch up with them when I can.
Ryan from Monster Radio says, interestingly enough, medieval tales of werewolves were a lot different. Werewolves were actually considered gentle and in some cases to be good luck. I know the Irish and Scottish legend of the Wolver. It was considered to be good luck, and it would actually help people in time of need. I don't know if it was the Renaissance that changed the view of werewolves, or if it was modern Hollywood. But it certainly Hollywood certainly did its part in changing a lot of legend.
Well,
the
Brothers Grimm had a lot to do with that too.
What's that?
The Brothers Grimm had a lot to do with that change of, because that there's been several people that say that the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood was a werewolf.
Well, the Benedante were basically a good werewolf. They were sent to protect people from evil and whatever else. The legends of them. The Catholic Church didn't care a whole lot for that legend. That may be where the werewolves started to get their bad name.
Well, another place
Ryan
that
just said Christianity painted the werewolves as evil.
Yep, there you go.
Another place where werewolves got a bad name was in England. The last Saxon kings, the last three, and I can only name one of them, were actually they were paying bounties to get rid of wolves because the wolves were seen as being predators on sheep and things like that. And in fact,
there's an Arkansas joke there, but I won't say anything.
The Welsh people were required to provide X amount of wolf hides every year as part of their tax. And over time, that's why there are no wolves in England now. They would wipe them out
to extinction.
But over time, their legend grew as their numbers shrank, and that's why we have stories like Black Shuck and I mean, although I do think something really did happen with Black Shuck because there's claw marks on the door of the church, and that was about 500 years later. But when you look at folklore and children's stories and things like that, wolves are notoriously absent from British folklore and tales, partially because they were wiped out to extinction. But for over centuries even, after the wolf was wiped out, there were always these stories of having seen them. And they were wiped out in England first, I think, Wales next, Scotland, and then Ireland is the order in which they disappeared. And they, are we talking baseball in the chat?
I think somebody's bringing up the football game. Oh, yeah, I think they're talking football.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
But anyway, because there was an absence of them in the British Isles to begin with. When you don't have something to look at to compare to reality, the memory and the legend tends to grow in extensively. And so a lot of the evilness of werewolves comes out of the fact that they were just, there was nothing there to compare to reality. And so, the stories grew. But at the same time, there, like I said, there's a notable absence of werewolves in most of the folklore and children's stories of the British Isles because they, again, weren't there to, yeah, well, a lot of children's stories were written as a sort of a way to warn children about the dangers of the woods and things like that. And it's not something you had to warn children about because they really weren't around. So
cautionary tales.
Yeah. So they just really weren't, they just don't appear in a lot of British fairy tales or
kind of like my grandparents telling me to be back in the house or at least in the yard under the light before it got dark or the boogers would get us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I was a kid, my grandparents lived in a place called Big Island. And I can remember always my grandmother telling me to stay off of that end of the island. I know what that end of the island was, but because there was a wild man that lived there. I didn't know until I was an adult that was another word for Bigfoot. But she always told me, when I was a kid, she told all of us, stay off that end of the island. There's a wild man there and he'll get you. And so
naturally you went down there?
Damn straight I did. Got snuck out of the house at about 11 o'clock at night, my cousin and I, and we walked that whole road all the way down to the other end. I used to play at that end of the island because there was an old abandoned farmhouse. It was the Heber farm. And their farmhouse stood for years and years. And I used to love to go. That's my playhouse. I didn't know any better. That was a funny, exciting. Of course, my grandmother would whip up some hickory tea on my backside for it, but I did it all the time. Yeah. Papa Bear points out, I actually lived in a cabin on that end of the island, and that's where my Bigfoot encounter happened, was on that end of that island. So I had no idea when I was a kid that what she meant by wild man. I just knew that I was supposed to stay off that end of the island, and of course, no child ever stays out of where they're supposed to. She wanted me to stay off that end of the island. She should have said, "Oh, go play over there. You'll have fun."
Yeah, you'll love it down there. It's the best part of the island.
Yeah. And I'd have stayed clear of it.
Yeah, best way to get me to do something as a kid was tell me I couldn't do it.
It still works on me as an adult. Tell me no. Tell me, some of my least favorite things to hear. You can't do that. You're a girl. And you're pretty smart for a girl. No, you're not strong enough. You're a girl. And I hear that a lot. So, yeah, it still works on me as an adult. Sure does.
That's that works on, that's that kind of reverse psychology works on a lot of us.
Yeah.
Surefire way to make me want to do something is tell me I can't do it or I shouldn't do it.
Yeah. I shouldn't do it. I'll think about it. Can't do it. I'm not physically or physically capable or intelligent enough. I will prove you wrong. And I'll enjoy doing it. I'll make you look like a fool. But
we had a question in the chat. Jack Mack asked about St. Christopher. He was known as the dog-headed saint. St. Christopher, in a lot of Catholic iconography, is shown as depicted with the head of a dog. He was supposedly a cynocephaly, one of the dog-headed race, until he performed his first miracle, and then supposedly he was cured and became normal. But in all of the Catholic texts that deal with St. Christopher, he's still called the dog-headed saint.
That's true. Although the St. Christopher my friend had on her dashboard didn't look anything like a dog.
Well, a lot of people have St. Christopher's medallions. I think I've got one somewhere. And he's not dog-headed in that, but if you look up the old illuminated manuscripts, it certainly shows him with the head of a dog.
Yep.
Yeah, he was the saint of travel.
Yeah, patron saint of travelers.
Saint of travelers.
Yeah. That's why people put them on the dashboard of their cars.
Mm-hmm. I've got one clipped to the back of my seat that my grandmother gave me when I turned 16.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, I'm not really superstitious, and I'm not a practicing Catholic, but I've been driving now 31 years, and I've never gotten into a serious accident. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I just keep moving it from car to car.
I'm gonna.
Northwood says someone told me I shouldn't get married. If I'd listened to them, it would have saved me a nightmare.
Somebody should have told me you should get married. Absolutely, marry that woman because she looks like a real nightmare. You'll love her. Oh well, yeah. I should introduce her to my ex. They'd make a great pair. I can't. That particular ex is dead, but
it's funny when you think about the origins of some of these saints, and like Miss Moon just posted, she has a Saint Anthony in her kitchen because of course that's the patron saint of lost items, and Saint Jude is the patron saint of hopeless causes. I think it's so ironic that the Children's Research Cancer Hospital is named after the patron saint of lost causes. I'm like, I don't know.
For that reason, right?
I'm assuming it must be either that or it's just a very poor taste. But, it's a great institution.
I think Danny Thomas picked that saint for that reason, because there's a story behind how he decided to do the hospitals. And I think it had to do with the fact that somebody told him it was a hopeless cause. And that's how I think it got the name. But you're right. It does seem in bad taste, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Seemed like somebody didn't do the research too well.
Yeah. It's a little bit on the nose. Yeah.
Folks, I want to say something real quick before we go too much further. If you guys are not subscribed over at the Blondes and Booze channel, please do so. They are within just a few of making their 1,000 subscribers. So I'm posting the link to their channel. So if y'all would do me a huge favor, just go over to their channel, give them a like and subscribe, and we would sure appreciate it, and it'll help them hit the 1,000 subscriber mark. So let's see if we can push them over the 1,000 mark tonight. I would really appreciate y'all's help in making sure that happens.
And if you do get it, if you subscribe, or even if you don't subscribe, make a point of watching one of their shows, Thursday nights and Friday nights. I never cease to learn something from them. I almost said that wrong. I never fail to learn something from them. They have really great guests. They had these two guys on the other night. They were amazing. I couldn't stop listening last night, wasn't it? They really, and I'm not being facetious, they really do have a good show. And so if you have a chance, you should at least stop in and watch one, and you'll be hooked and you'll subscribe.
I must have missed that show last night, DA. Did you watch? I don't know what she's talking about.
I wasn't watching.
Well, you guys were busy. I understand.
Yeah.
While you're at it, at the subject of hitting likes and subscribes, I just put the link to Miss Neoma's channel up as well. So make sure you show some love to the Neoma Fins and Open to Doubt channel as well. So make sure you give her a like as well and subscribe.
I'm 31 from 4,000.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
I'd
awesome.
like to see that.
Maybe we can help you get there too.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd like to get there by the end of the week. Well, not this week, but
that gets you close to your aluminum foil play button, right? You're somewhere.
Blondes and Booze is 5 away.
Yay!
5 away. They're at $9.95. I just refreshed my browser. I'm going to hit that link up again one more time.
Get over there and subscribe, and then come right back here.
I'll throw that link up one more time. 5 away, folks. Let's get those 5. Let's get those 5 subs for them. Subs on YouTube don't cost you a cent.
That's right.
I don't think I'm a subscriber to their show. I need to fix.
Get over there right now, Steve.
I'm working on it, Neoma. Yes, mother.
3 away. Now we're 3 away. Steve, you might just help push it over the top.
That's pretty cool. Let's see. There they are. Subscribed.
Yay!
They just hit
My
1K.
witnesses.
I just refreshed the browser.
Yay!
You were probably the 1,000 subscribers, Steve. I hit refresh and they are now at 1K. All right, everybody, a big round of applause for the ladies over at Blondes and Booze.
Yay!
Congratulations, you guys hit 1,000.
Now 2,000, folks. Let's do this.
Well,
That might take a little
that's a big
doing.
milestone. That
That
gives
is
a
a
little
big
kick in the
milestone.
algorithm too, doesn't it, DA?
Yeah, it does. It kicks them up on the notifications on YouTube. It gets them into more searches. So making that first 1,000 is a big deal.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations, ladies.
Then we got to try to get Robbie there as well.
Where
How
you at,
far
Robbie?
are you, Robbie? I'm already a member of your podcast, so I can't help you too much.
Well, I'm still working on the 500 mark. I'm 357, I think. So we're working on the 500 milestone. So yeah, it happens, I guess.
I'm going to make sure I'm subscribed to you, Robbie, because I'm not sure if I am or not.
It's 362, Robbie.
Naomi's,
Okay,
Naomi's and Robbie's.
Okay.
Well, I'm so happy we were able to get Blondes and Booze to the 1K mark.
That's good because
Awesome.
it was 27 last night when they were telling us.
Thank y'all so much for
literally
making
just
that happen.
crowdsourced it. That was awesome.
And I don't want to give too much away, but we do have some fun things coming up, the 4 channels together
All 4
in a couple of
channels.
months. So you guys need to really be on the lookout for some really fun things.
It'll be a 4-part
I am
four-part
subscribed,
series
Robbie.
on Neoma Finn opened it out, what's really out there, DAX Machina, and Blondes and Booze. And all 4 channels will be involved. I think y'all are really going to enjoy it.
I think so too. So congratulations, Blondes and Booze. I'm excited for you.
That's awesome.
I'm so glad we could get them there. That is awesome. You guys did all the work of getting yourselves within a few. We just helped push it over the top.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
so glad that made that. That just made my night.
I'm gonna tell you, I was to watch Brandy work at that Pigeon Forge conference. How she got out there and really engaged and worked and talked to people, and that was There's not a lot of people that have the drive to get out there and do it that way. I mean, she was out in front of that table the entire day.
She's good.
And that was a long day.
That I am absolutely impressed with anybody who can do that, because I have a hard time talking to my own husband. So to talk to strangers like that just is amazing.
Randy says they're at 1,010 now. Heck yeah, that is awesome.
We all have our own gifts in Neoma, and my wife always teases me that I act like I'm running for mayor, because I always seem to interact with everybody, and I've been to enough conferences and whatnot with DA to know that he has the gift of bullshit too. So, yeah.
My mother had
It's a
5
donkey
children.
on Shrek. Yeah, I can talk. It's getting me to shut up. That's the trick.
My mother had 5 children. 3 of them have never met a stranger. 2 of us, the oldest and not the oldest, the second oldest and me, we can't carry on a conversation at a family get together. We're just so withdrawn. Now put me in front of a crowd with a microphone and a locked door, and you can't shut me up. Put me in front of a camera, I'm happy as can be. Put me in a room with a bunch of people sitting around a table where it's just, a small crowd and we're all interacting, I'm lost.
Yeah, you're like my wife, but I need my wife with me to pull me out of the room, or else I would never make it home. And there's that. Being living in the South doesn't help either.
You're
the hour and a half goodbye.
Yeah.
The Ozarks.
The Ozarks, good night. They're pretty notorious.
In the Midwest, it's the go out the front door to the car, go back over to this car, head out to the barn, then go back to the front door, say goodbye to everybody on the porch, walk back out to the car. Remember that you brought kids with you, so go back in the house and get them. Come back out to the car, wave at everybody, have whoever lives in the house help you get the car started because it ain't running, and then kind of get pushed down That's the way it is in the Midwest.
That's what it sounds like around here.
Yeah.
It's kids, get your coat, then stand at the door for 30 minutes and talk, then stand 30 minutes at the door of the car to talk for another 30 minutes, then realize they forgot something and go back in, then you stand at the door again, and the cycle just repeats. It usually takes 2 hours to say goodnight.
My husband has this weird thing where he'll like, okay, we're leaving, and I'll get up and get ready to walk out the door, and he'll have vanished into the bathroom. And like today, we don't have garbage service out here where we live. We have to take it to a receptacle in another town. And so we usually wait till we got about 3 garbage bags, throw them in the back, and head to and he said, okay, well, let's get ready to go to the dump. So I go out to the kitchen, and I went out and got the 3 garbage bags, and I came back inside, and I thought, is that bath water running? He just decided to take a bath when he said we were going to the dump. And I thought, that's weird. He does that to me all the time. He never
done it after the dump.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it just seems so odd that.
Well, maybe you misheard him and Brad was taking a dump.
That could have been it. Absolutely. That was what it was.
A post-dump bath isn't outside the realm of possibility. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that very well could have been it. I don't know. He does it all the time, though. We'll get ready. One day we were all at his mom and dad's house up in Illinois, and we were going out to dinner. And so we all head toward the kitchen, and Brad disappeared. And I turned to my father-in-law, and he says, my dad was the same way. Every time we got ready to leave, he'd disappear into the bathroom. And we stood there for 15 minutes. I thought that is crazy.
Neoma, you're in Tennessee, right?
I'm in Tennessee, yes.
Central, east, west, what part?
Straight north of Nashville, right on the Kentucky, Nashville or Kentucky-Tennessee state line.
Okay, you're west of where I was then. I recently was at my mother-in-law's place somewhere near Linden, Tennessee. And it's kind of more central, though. And it's small town in the middle of nowhere. She's got a fairly rural property out there. But there's some very dark woods down there. And we were joking around about driving down. We were just going to turn the phone on and just watch the side of the road, see if we could pick up Dogman or something. And then I kind of creeped myself out because I couldn't see more than about 10 feet into the woods. I'm like, I don't want to see what's out there.
There's a weird thing about the lights down here, too, that I've noticed is up in the Midwest, up in where I'm originally from, which is, thank you. It's straight west of Chicago. It's the best way I can describe it. You hit the Mississippi River, you are in the heart of the towns that I grew up in. And there, if you have a street light, it pretty much lights up a pretty decent area, and it sort of fades out as it goes. Down here, the street light is just this cone that shoots straight down to the ground. You step out of pitch black into the street light, and then out of the street light straight back into pitch black. There's no hazy area. And so I noticed a couple of, I guess it was about this time last year. I don't leave the house much at night. I might go sit out on the front porch every now and then, but I rarely leave the house at night. And I was coming home from someplace, and I don't remember where. And I turned on my street, and I realized that since I moved here, every house on my road, and there's probably a dozen houses on this road. The properties aren't all that close together, and you got 3 or 4 of them right in a row, and then you got an open patch, and that type of a thing. But every single house on my road has installed a security light, and that's only been since we moved here. And of course, in the recent years, I've had some pretty strange banging on my house. The other thing that I noticed, it's about 3 or 4 months ago, at one end of our road, that way I'm pointing the wrong direction, is a farm that they raise goats and sheep and small livestock. At this end of the road, they raise cattle and crops. And on both sides, well, on this side, this side over here, it's woods, but across the road over there, it's pasture and crops. But this one, at this end of the road, they bought 2 donkeys. Now, the belief is if you put a couple of donkeys in with your small livestock, any predators are going to have to fight those donkeys. Unfortunately,
They'll
donkeys.
stomp a coyote to death.
Yeah. They are also, though, they are predator, or they are prey animals themselves. So they may put up a good fight, but they probably are going to lose that fight. But it
It's a
struck
great
me as
alarm
odd.
clock, though. They make a lot of noise.
Oh, yeah. They definitely do. And they will, like DA said, they'll stomp a coyote to death. But I thought that was awfully odd that in the last 6 months they've decided to get a couple of donkeys to put in with those goats and sheep. And again, it's been about a month now since I had probably the most terrifying experience of my life.
Love it. It's funny.
Where to pee?
Little Patty made a comment about starting a channel. I've actually been toying over the idea, but it wouldn't be cryptid related. I was thinking about something I know more about, and I was considering the fact of putting up a channel where basically would just kind of like the healthcare equivalent of y'all ain't gonna believe this shit. Just kind of like stuff that's happened in the ER and things like that. I'm like,
you will not believe what we pulled out of this man's rectum last night.
Basically, that kind of stuff. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if people would actually watch it, and then I'm not sure if I want to interact with those who would. And so
That's funny.
Because I've told some of the stories to DA, and he and I've sat there over drinks and laughed, and I'm like, but I don't know if everybody else would get the dark sense of humor that goes along with that.
I would definitely watch that channel, and if people don't hang out with me for it, well, that's too bad. I'd still watch that channel. That's some of my favorite stories. I still am trying to figure out a way to. I want my death to be one of those deaths that lands me in the Darwin Awards.
I'm amazed every day that I'm still alive, honestly. Just some of the stupid stuff I've done.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
peeing on that tree with DA was probably one of the dumber things, and that was completely accidental.
And we didn't have a clue that thing was there, though.
I'm just glad it was on a low-fat diet, or I would have been dead.
Yeah, that's one time when I'd have been pointing and laughing at you, Steve. I'm sorry. Don't take it wrong.
We didn't say anything because we would have known if something would have been coming at us because we'd have heard the girls in the van peeling out without us.
Well, ignorance is bliss right there, because I was perfectly content to relieve myself on that tree, but I'm a little more concerned now that I know more, and Nick Valente so casually point out what an idiot I was.
How's Nick doing? I haven't heard from him in a long time.
I haven't talked to him in ages. I hope he's okay.
Yeah, I was just talking to him the other day. He's doing good.
Good.
He's in the process of moving to North Carolina.
Really?
I didn't think he'd ever leave New Jersey.
No, his son and daughter-in-law had a new grandbaby, and he wants to be closer to the kid. Wants to spoil the grandbaby, so he's moving to somewhere in North Carolina. I can't remember where he said it was.
Well, that's cool. We have no excuse for moving back to Illinois.
Hopefully he'll be close to me. We can do some Dogman investigations.
Oh, that's
sure, he'd love to have you.
He's done some stuff in North Carolina before, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has.
With the big supportive group that we have here, I would probably be one of the few people in the history of YouTube with no history that could get 5,000 subscribers in the span of a week, because everybody that follows you would follow me. That's awesome.
There you go. So you have no excuse not to start that channel.
There you go, Steve.
There you go. Well, that'd be interesting. If I do, I will, with DA's permission, definitely shout it out on here, just to have some of these fine folks crank up the bandwidth.
And I would definitely give you a shout out on my channel too.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Kakarot Prime 69 says, are there creatures that walk on two legs and can cloak themselves or become transparent? Now, there's a lot of conjecture about that, about whether Bigfoot or even Dogman can cloak or go through portals. This really isn't the channel for that sort of stuff. We're more evidence based. I'm not saying that that's an area that they refer to as the woo, and we will never claim that woo is impossible. The woo doesn't exist, but we all come from a pretty solid law enforcement background. Steve was a cop even for a little bit. He's a first responder still. Robbie's been a cop since God was a corporal. I was a cop for most of my career. Doc's Air Force flight medic. Around here, we pretty much just look for the evidence-based material. And from what we can tell, what people may be calling cloaking is a natural blending ability because it's caused by clear hair shafts. Researchers like Doug Hychak and a lot of big names in the field are discovering hair samples that have a clear hair shaft. And that hair shaft allows them to absorb and redirect light. Now, the night we had MK Davis on the show, and this is one and Robbie and mine's favorite episodes. The night we had MK Davis on the show, he showed a sequence from the Freeman footage where a black Sasquatch was being filmed, and it stopped in front of a tree and just disappeared. And you couldn't see it on camera anymore. It just vanished. It didn't duck into the tree. It didn't go through a portal. It didn't shimmer and disappear. It just stopped in front of this tree and vanished from sight. And as he started getting closer with the camera, suddenly it reappeared when it started moving. It blended into its background perfectly. And as soon as it realized he was still coming its direction, it started moving again, and you could obviously see it. Another great video is when Robbie showed the video of the doll sheep. That it's called adaptive camouflage, and you would be astounded how many animals are damn good at hiding and can hide in plain sight. You could be looking at it. Well, in the case of that doll sheep video, you're looking at close to 30 of them, and you can only think you see 3 or 4.
I think I counted 5, and I was really proud of myself till they all moved.
And then they moved.
I think 5 that night was the biggest number. Somebody guessed was 5, and then whoever was shooting at that one that was really, really obvious missed and hit the rock, and then 30 others.
Well, a lot of our subscribers, subscribe to both lines of thinking, both the woo and the more physical world. And it's not that we're saying that the woo is impossible. It's just that it's not testable. We're looking more at what we can scientifically confirm or deny. And it's like some of us on the show, myself included, are pretty religious. You can't prove or disprove God scientifically, but that doesn't mean yay or nay. It just means that scientifically you cannot test it. And so we struggle with that with the woo. Since none of us know how to positively open a portal, we can't open one up, peek in, and go, nope, he's there, he's not. There's
reach through.
It's a gray area,
right?
Pull back a hairy hand.
Well, Jack Black said, like the end of Harry and the Hendersons. Exactly. Yep. And those were just actors in suits. The director told them to stand still. And they were there the entire time. It wasn't trick photography. It wasn't anything. There was no green screen involved. They were just standing there completely still. And as soon as they moved, that's when you saw them.
I have gone back and freeze framed that scene so many times to count them. Because once you know where they are, you can count them. And every time I do that, I get a different number. I never come up with the same number, But once they start moving, they're there. So I mean, you know where to count them at, and you can see them if you go back, but you can't ever see them all. Right. That's all there is to it. I've never been able to count them all.
Well, that's that same thing with that doll sheep video. It's not that they were invisible. It's not that they were in another dimension. They were just standing stock still and blended in with their surroundings. But as soon as they moved, bang. Robbie, do you have that video handy? Can you send it to me again?
Yeah, let me see if I can find it. Give me a minute.
I think that the important message here, though, is not whether or not they can cloak and not whether or not they can step through a portal or anything like that. The important thing is, before we figure out any of that, we've got to get them identified and cataloged with science. Once we get them to that point, then we'll worry about other things.
Right.
But until we get them recognized and in the science books, none of it matters anyway.
Absolutely true. Denise CO, and I've got a question about that CO. You're from Colorado or you're a corrections officer? Because I was a corrections officer for 10 years. But she had a question. She says, I'm hearing some stories about Bigfoot and Dogman cohabitating. Thoughts? I thought they stayed clear of each other. There's a Choctaw story about them going to war with each other. And to me, it would make more sense to me that the two biggest predators in the area would be competing for resources, not working together.
I would like to point out that traditionally people say that dogmen exist in the north end of the LBL and Bigfoot exists in the south end, and that they have a sort of a treaty with each other to stay at opposite ends. However, I guess it's been about a year and a half ago when I was there. We were headed down to a campsite to be with a group of people. And as we were traveling along on the south side, we were at the south end of the LBL. I saw what I think may have been a dogman. It was very brief. It happened so quickly and lasted for such a short time that I cannot 100% say that's what I saw, but I saw it on the south side. And so whether or not they cohabitate, they definitely overlap their territories.
Well, they prey on the same things.
Yeah.
Thank you, Werewolf.
Deer,
You just summed up
other
a
ungulates, and the
occasional
occasional lonely hiker.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to run into either one of them. I mean, I would love to know that they exist. I'm not volunteering to be the bastard that finds them.
No, like I said last night in chat, I have no problem running into any of them, Gugwe, Dogman, Bigfoot, as long as it happens to be a masochistic one that's into bondage and already died up. I don't have a problem with that at all.
A Dogman with a gimp mask on.
I was going to say, she's looking for the gimp Dogman. That'd be amazing.
That'd be great. I'd be all about. I'd take pictures with it. Now, if it's on the S side of that S&M, we got another problem.
As long as you know the safe word you find, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, it's tough to pronounce anything in Dogman.
Yeah. But I clearly I'm not as brave as I want to pretend I am, because I couldn't get any farther than my front door a few nights ago. And I don't think when I heard that sound coming at me, and I don't mean to harp on it, but I had this intense feeling of, I'm going to die. We're going to die. We're going to die right now. We're going to die on this front porch. It's going to kill us. And all I could think is, bless his heart, my husband. I just started saying, get in the house now. We got to get in the house. And without batting an eye, without pausing anything, he got up and he was behind me and sort of kind of pushing me towards the house. And he was saying, what is it? What is it? What is it? But he didn't question it. I didn't have to argue with him, because I don't think if he had stopped and argued with me, we'd be here. I don't think I'd be here right now. I really don't. That was the most horrifying feeling I've ever had in my life. Years and years and years ago. And it has been 29 years now since I had my, is that right? Yeah, we'll go with that. It's probably been 39, but I'm gonna go with 29 because I like that number better. Since I had my Bigfoot sighting, and that night I was scared. I should have been more afraid than I was, because my children were in danger, but at the time I didn't recognize that they were. Years later, when I realized that, I had that horrible, oh my God, I'm a horrible mom feeling. But it was nothing, absolutely nothing like how I felt sitting on that porch last month. There was something, it was sending a message with that howl. And the other thing is that it was howling, but it wasn't sitting in one place, which I've never experienced that before. It was howling, but it was like the howl was, it was moving towards us. It was getting louder. Like I think it was probably about 800 yards away when it started. Of course, in my mind, everything is exaggerated now because that's what your memory does to you in a terror situation. But it felt like it had closed in to within 100 yards by the time we got in the house. And
they're fast.
And so I think if Brad had argued with me, if he had said, "Oh, stop it," we wouldn't be here. And I've never had such an overwhelming feeling of being about to die. And I was in a car accident where I was thrown 20 feet. And I can remember being in the air thinking, being at peace with the fact that I thought when I landed, I'd be dead. And that was not the feeling I had that night. I had this feeling of I was being preyed upon.
It's a whole different feeling when you feel like you're on the menu.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced that chill, and it's more than just, as we jokingly say, "Would you look at the time?" It's more of a feeling of, I'm in mortal peril here.
Yes. And a knowledge that I'm sorry, I just read what Papa Bear wrote, and he is so correct. He is absolutely correct. I don't have a gun for that very reason. Some people should not carry guns, and I am the reason. I'm one of those people. A lot of people would be dead if I owned a gun.
There's a very a tactical reason to know when to de-ask the AO.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes exfiltration is your best option.
Yeah. I've never been so relieved in my life when my husband just got up and started moving in the house. And then, you get inside and you realize that your windows, you don't realize how big your windows are until you think about how fragile that glass is.
Yeah.
And I realized every window in our house is a bit oversized. So.
Yeah, the downside to natural light.
So that was, I don't know what made me start talking about that, but going back to do they cohabitate? I can't say that they do. I don't think anybody knows for sure that they do, but they do overlap their territories, most definitely.
I definitely think they overlap. Robbie,
Yeah.
Did you get that feeling when you went down in the Ocala? Robbie, you're going to have to reboot. It got you early tonight. God dang it. For some reason, at least once a show, this talk studio just kills Robbie's sound. Don't know why. As soon as he goes out and comes back in, he's fine. But
for me,
for some reason, it just doesn't like him. Doesn't like his setup for whatever reason. It doesn't do it to me. Doesn't do it to Steve. Doesn't do it to Doc. It's just Robbie every time.
No, I tend to keep mine muted when I'm not talking, just because, I share office space and I have dogs and all this stuff. But
all right, he's trying to. I wasn't the only one moving stuff around. I'm like, what's going on here?
Ring around the rosy,
I got dizzy.
pocket full of posies.
hey, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, Robbie,
sorry.
when you were in Ocala, what's that,
was muted,
Steve?
so.
When you were in Ocala, was it, there's something out there moment, or was it a, Lord of the Rings, looks like meat's back on the menu, boys?
Now, I assume you're talking about when me and Marty heard the growl, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
I don't. You know this, Steve. You know this from the. And I'm not saying that I'm, Superman or Captain America or anything like that. But we're, military law enforcement, we're just firefighters are hardwired different. And a lot of times in that moment, you don't really think, oh, I'm in danger. But you do. You got that, as DA likes to call it, the lizard brain. But a lot of times we don't listen to it because we know we have. A lot of times we're the only one that can do that job. So right there in that particular moment, as we say, I went into cop mode.
Mhm.
I instead of moving away, I moved closer. And of course, part of the reason I had to move closer anyway, because some loudmouth wouldn't keep his mouth shut. But after the fact, when I sat down and and this has happened a lot of times. I'm sure it's happened to you too, and probably you too, Steve. You think, God, that was really stupid. Why did I do that? But
Yeah.
in the moment, I never thought I was in any danger. Number one, my biggest thought was, making sure Marty was behind me. So, because, that's that, like I said, the way we're wired. But going back and thinking about it afterwards, I was like, even if it hadn't been a cryptid, I mean, there's bears, there's Florida panthers, there's all kinds of stuff like that down there. And you're just like, why did I do that?
Think of your opportunities there, Robbie. Think about that.
And
Yeah, I like to call that pulling a Hagrid when you're like, I shouldn't have done that.
Probably should have done that. I've never been one that's been accused of thinking about my actions. I always, if I make it through, I'll be thinking about them afterwards. But I guess somewhere in the back of my mind, I was thinking, this is something kind of. I mean, obviously, I had to be serious because I drew my weapon, so it was serious enough to make me. It wasn't like it was just something where I was like, that ain't nothing. I mean, it was enough to elicit that response from me. So, but
and it's funny how ingrained that response is. We had a guy get a little bit animated in the urgent care one night, and I caught myself reaching for the gun that I normally carry at 4:00 that wasn't there. And when my coworker's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Just shut up." Shut up.
Yeah, and when, like you said, when that muscle memory or that, that's an instinctive thing that you don't even think about because this is something you just train for all. Which I'm sure both y'all, the academies, they taught you the same thing. That's you watch for that because if somebody's carrying a gun, they're gonna constantly be touching it to make sure it's there if it's concealed.
Right, you always watch the body language.
Yeah, but I've been in situations, well, just like the thing with me and Jess got in Georgia. When we're sitting there talking, having a conversation, everything's great, all the bugs and frogs and everything, and then all of a sudden, when it stopped and went dead quiet, it was instantaneous that I pulled it out and just had it up under my arm like that. Not that I felt like I was in any kind of danger, but it's just, okay, stuff just got real because, they don't stop for, it's like you were talking about you and Doc out there in Joe Ball the other night, DA. Where y'all were at, there was nothing, but you could hear them going on down by the lake. There was nothing. You couldn't hear anything for like probably 150, 200 yard radius. You couldn't hear anything. And that's one of those eerie quiets. And so thinking about it afterwards, you just like, well, that was really stupid to just kind of stand there and wait for whatever it was to come say, hey.
Well, I think that kind of reaction is kind of ingrained into us or developed into us, kind of like the uncanny valley.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that we don't like the silence. There's a reason that we don't trust things that look almost like us, but not quite, and you make yourself crazy thinking about it.
Yeah. And so I think that when you're in situations like that, number one, it's like I always listen to your gut. If your gut tells you leave, there's a reason. And there's a reason that saying is true, that your gut reaction is typically your first reaction is the right reaction. I know there's sometimes in situations and things that would, like, with you and healthcare and where you work and things you do, Steve. I mean, I'm sure there's times that your gut tells you something, but you have to go against it just because you have, when I was a firefighter, my gut reaction was, don't go in that burning building. But, as a paid firefighter, I had to go in and do what I was supposed to do. Same thing with law enforcement. But
sometimes I gut works the opposite way. I had a patient come in not too long ago, and both the provider and I were like, something ain't right. There's more going on here. Something's not going the way it should. And so, the provider was like, I'm not seeing much, but I think I ought to run some labs on this one. And her name was Stacy. I said, Stacy, I don't know, something's making my ass itch. And she kind of laughed. She goes, yeah, mine too. And so she ordered a workup with this person. Ended up the person had a situation that was emergency. They needed to have surgery later that night. Had we not followed that itch, then the patient might have had a bad outcome. We might have bought them the time they needed to get better or whatever. And so I've learned to trust that instinct.
yeah,
My instinct is smarter than my brain. I've learned that a long time ago.
I tend to trust my gut, especially in dangerous situations, because instinct and training will save your ass when higher reason may not.
yep. Their story's just a little too perfect, and it's just everything is just a little too good, and you're like, maybe I ought to run that license and see if they've got a warrant.
What about when
Right.
you and Johnny were in South Carolina, your research area? Did you feel it there?
No, I have not been to that place and not felt like I was getting paced out of there every time I walk out. I've always felt a presence there. I've never walked into that place up there and not felt like we were being watched. And like I said, I've been in the woods all my life, and there's been thousands of times I've been in the woods and never got that feeling.
That's the way it feels out of Joe Bald. I mean,
Yeah.
every time you're there, it just feels a little off.
Yeah, and I looked at Johnny the first time we went up there. The first time we went up there was walking. When we were walking back out, I stopped because I was in front of Johnny when we went back out, and I stopped, and he said, "What?" I said, "Something's watching us." He goes, "Oh yeah." He said, "I feel it too." And it's just it was like until we got to that gate and got out of the territory, and then it was like the feeling just went away. Just that the short hairs on the back of your neck standing up, and just that. It's hard to describe unless you've had that feeling. But if you've had it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just you just feel like there is something there watching you and watching every move you're making. It didn't feel like it wasn't a threatening feeling. I've only felt that feeling one time in the woods. I felt it plenty of times in law enforcement, but I've only felt it one time in the woods. But it's there.
Yeah.
Robbie, have you ever researched anywhere near Taylor, Mississippi?
Taylor, Mississippi. That sounds familiar.
Siege at Lockett Ranch area.
Yeah, I think me and Steve have talked, not that Steve, but Steve Lamb. I think me and him have had a discussion about that one before. He's got all. I mean, he knows all that stuff. He's got all these things on lockdown, and he brings it. You and him would actually get along really good now. he is a what I say. He said, DA research is his crack.
Yeah.
He loves to research, but yeah, I think that sounds familiar. I think he told me a story about that one time or another.
I just wondered. I haven't ever met anybody who's actually been to that area.
And I've never been there, but I'm pretty sure that he had told me something about that. He's actually got some hookups with some pretty big organizations that he gets a lot of information from. So I'm pretty sure that that's one of the ones he was talking to me about at one time.
Well, there was a news article on a news channel not too terribly long ago out of Taylor, Mississippi about animal mutilations. And the local law enforcement was just kind of stumped because these were good sized animals that were mauled to death, something that a mountain lion wouldn't normally take on, like horses and donkeys.
Hmm.
That's a big monster.
Yeah, that does sound familiar. That's probably because I think we did do we didn't do a show on it, but I think we talked about animal mutilations one time. That was probably something that he brought up.
Is Steve the guy you do your podcast with?
Yeah, he's the newest guy.
Gotcha.
He's
I've only seen a couple of your shows, but it's need to go back and catch up.
There's recently in a remote village in Peru, they had, and this is off topic completely, but they had a UFO, what they believe was an alien encounter. They've since come out and said that it was actually illegal diamond miners that were just playing with the villagers. But I was watching a podcast and the guy was showing cell phone footage. It was literally somebody holding their cell phone and somebody else was recording what was being shown on the cell phone. So you're watching a video of a video of a video. But it was horrifying. They had this person wrapped in banana leaves. It was a human being, not an animal. And when they unwrapped that person, they have a thing called pelacara down there, which means face peeler. And this guy's face was gone. It was nothing but skull. And yeah, and so of course, you know, the famous human mutilation here in the United States was the Lovett Cunningham incident at the White Sands Missile Base in 1956.
So
but
face peeler a Gugwe?
Well, you know, you would think because it's a similar name, but I think that at this point, most people down there in that area use that expression to describe anybody who comes in there and harvests humans. So human traffickers, anything like that. And there's all kinds of negative, you know, nefarious activity going on down there. So, but I think originally it may, and I researched until my head felt like it was going to explode. I thought I might find it in Pino Torola's book because he traveled all over South America. I looked on the internet. I have several books listing cryptids all over the world, and I couldn't actually find a pelacara outside of a reference to aliens. It's a term that they use for a specific alien, or originated that way, and then now it's just turned into anybody who comes in there and harvests humans.
And what country is this again? You said Bolivia?
Peru.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and you were talking about mutilations, and I think people are often surprised to realize that animals that aren't the only ones being mutilated. They're actually human mutilations that have been recorded. And of course, like I said, the famous one here is the one that happened, Sergeant Lovett and Major Cunningham. Cunningham was
that.
So Cunningham and Lovett were sent out to pick up debris after a missile test to that was just standard procedure. They'd do a missile test, they'd send guys out there to pick up debris, they'd bring it back, they'd study it. And it was dark. They got out of their vehicle and they began to walk across the desert, scanning with their flashlights. Lovett peeled off, went over a rise. The assumption is that Cunningham assumed he had to go to the bathroom. When after about 15 minutes or so, Lovett didn't come back and join him. He doubled back looking for him, and he got to the rise and he goes up over the rise. And as he's approaching the top, he hears this horrible scream, and he thought, "Oh, for the love of Pete, Lovett stepped on a rattlesnake. That's all I need to deal with tonight." He gets up over the rise. It's not a rattlesnake. There's a UFO hovering. It's got this long snake-like tube coming out of it, which is wrapped around Lovett's leg and dragging him into the craft. Cunningham couldn't move. He just stood there and watched it in absolute horror. And then once Lovett was inside the craft, he turned around and ran back to the vehicle, called it into the base, curled up into the floorboard, and that's where they found him. Well, they took Cunningham to the hospital to be examined, and eventually to the Mud Puppy's office. I don't know what they call them. The military police office, to be interrogated, because the assumption was that Cunningham had somehow done in Lovett for whatever reason, and he was using this UFO story as a cover-up. For 3 days, they looked for Lovett. They could not find him. And when they finally did find his body, which was pretty much in the condition of a cattle that's, or a horse or any kind of animal that's been mutilated, the precision cuts, the missing skin, the drilled out anus, things like that, his body was 10 miles from where he had been abducted, reportedly abducted. And based on the time frame, there was no way Cunningham could have taken him there, done the things that had been done to his body, come back, made the call, and then they showed up. So he was exonerated, but it shook him up so bad that this is a career man. He was a major. He was a career officer. Had a great future in the military. He left the military shortly after that, and pretty much scarred him for life. So that is the big, and that was in 1956, and that's the big, most famous human mutilation in this country. Now there's a lot of human mutilation that apparently goes on in South America, to the point that they have this Pelacara, that a name for the aliens that do that. So I found that really interesting. So
Makes you wonder why an alien would be doing that. I mean, I can understand them kind of stealing the organs and whatever, because it helps us understand metabolism and, physiology and whatnot. But what value is the face?
that I don't know. I honestly, of course you couldn't see this man's body. Even the person who did whose live stream I was watching admitted that it's a video of a video. So and of course we're sitting on this side of the laptop. I was watching a video of a video of a video. And even he admitted this could have been, somebody was catching some scenes from a movie, or, it could have been a lot of things that may not have been true. It could have been staged for a lot of reasons. And the other thing is, the man was clothed, so who knows what was going on with the rest of his body. But it was some pretty, in the video you could see the fatty layer here under the skin. And it was some pretty good makeup, let's put it that way. I was going to say something else about that. My mind. I'm getting old. I hate being old. Actually, I really love being old, because now I can say and do anything I want, and then people are like, she's just old. But at the same time, my mind's playing games with me these days. There are a lot of mutilations. How did we get on the subject of I guess I was the one that drew us there. I'm sorry.
You're saying I will let you have it.
Mentally advanced. That's the word I like.
You're chronologically gifted.
That's right. Papa Bear says, for the same reason we take trophies from wild game, I think. And maybe, there's a spaceship up there that's got a bunch of faces hanging on it, I don't know.
Or they stick it to the outside of the jar so they remember which specimen it came from.
Yeah. True. Could be. Do you think we all look alike to aliens?
Hard to say.
There's a joke in there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And we, it was funny. It was kind of a running joke with Caucasian folks that, apparently all Asian people look the same to us. And where I work, we have a lot of Filipino travel nurses and other folks that work there. Well, I lived in Manila for 4 months, and one of my coworkers made a comment about such and such being Chinese. I'm like, no, she's a Filipina. I'm like, how do you know that? I'm like, well, first of all, I lived in the Philippines. Second of all, they really don't all look alike any more than we do. I mean,
Yeah.
we're all Caucasian here, but we're all very different looking. Robbie and DA look a little closer than the rest of us, but I mean, they're still identifiable as separate people with separate heritage.
I have well,
Hang on,
she's my older
let me help
son's.
you with that.
There you go. Well, I don't want to be left out here. My older son is one of his best friends is Asian, and of course she has a lot of Asian friends. She's half Korean and half Chinese, and she has a Laotian friend. I can't ever say it. Laotian, whatever.
Laotian, yeah,
And
right.
she has and I've been around him enough. I recognize the traits of enough to separate them from what part of the Pacific Rim they come from anyway. And they really don't all look alike.
No. My daughter's boyfriend is from Vietnam, and he always makes jokes about such and such. Like if I show him something he doesn't see, it's like, oh, it's because my eyes are slanted. I'm like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
But you can tell the different cultures apart, just like you can the different Caucasians.
Yeah, I mean, I can pick
one
an
of us-
Irishman out from a Swede any day.
Well, exactly. You look at an Irish, a German, Swede, heck, even a Canadian and an American. We stand out from each other. But it's kind of a running joke, though.
Yeah. But anyway, there was something else that I was going to lead that right back to where we were, but God help me, I got lost on the trail.
We all do. I think we're famous for that on this show.
No, my beard isn't quite as grown in as your dad's. Sorry. I'm working on it. So anyway, boys.
Where are some more places that we've had Dogman and werewolf stories from?
Taylor, Mississippi has really been interesting for me lately. I can't seem to let that go. But another place that terrifies me because I have a kid that lives so close to it is, and I think there's a lot of activity going on there right now, is Daniel Boone in Kentucky. And I think that there is a lot of activity happening there. And it scares me because, again, you don't believe it until you've seen it, and by then it's too late. So,
well, and as people that are interested in the genre, we always talk about the distinctions between the Dogman and the Gugwe and the Bigfoot or whatever. I would argue that if a layperson or even one of us found one of them, I don't think we're going to stick around long enough to go, oh well, that's clearly a Gugwe, whatever. And we're going to run like hell,
right.
And I could definitely see them being misidentified. If you look at even like the werewolves in fiction, if you look at like the Lon Chaney movies, maybe it's because of makeup limitations or whatever, but the werewolves were portrayed as basically a humanoid that was hairy. Okay, wouldn't be a big stretch for that to be a Gugwe, Dogman, Bigfoot, any of the above. You look at some of the more recent werewolf, movies and whatnot, and then portrayed with being more dog-like. They got the dog head, the St. Christopher kind of characters, and I wonder, why that change in that? Is it because we're really understanding more of it? Is it because makeup's getting better? I mean, I'd like to think I'm really brave, but I'm going to run like hell if an 8-foot dog, hairy man, shows up. I don't care if it's dog or monkey or what the hell. I'm leaving.
If he shows up looking like Lon Chaney Jr. in full costume, I'm going to run. But I have an actual story about that. Jack Pierce, who is one of my idols, I've always admired his work. Of course, he's famous for the werewolf or the Wolfman, Frankenstein, the Mummy.
Right, he did a
Amazing,
lot of serious
amazing,
makeup.
amazing artist. The first werewolf movie that Universal did was, of course, Werewolf of London, which was a huge flop. And his original makeup idea for that was very much more like what we do see today in movies. Of course, it wasn't as advanced in that, what Rick Baker, thank you, accomplished with is miles and miles and miles ahead of Jack Pierce. But Jack Pierce originally wanted the more of a dog appearance with the whole upright ears and the snout and everything, and they rejected it. And if you look at the Werewolf of London, it's not as manlike as the Wolfman, but Werewolf of London was a failure, and so he went. The studio wanted something more human looking, and so he went with a more human looking werewolf with the Wolfman, and of course it was a big hit.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny about that is you talk about Rick Baker. He won an Emmy for the makeup on American Werewolf in London, and then Werewolf of London is kind of one of his inspirations. One of the first ones that he saw. He won that Emmy or Academy Award. I'm sorry, the Oscar, and then the remake of the Wolfman. Rick Baker did the makeup for that and won another Oscar for that too.
Yeah,
so he kind of went full circle with going to from the design he had in American Werewolf in London to going back to designing something like what was his original inspiration.
Sure. Well, and you mentioned the remake of the Wolfman. The recent remake of that.
Benicio del Toro.
Thank you. I just went completely blank. I'm like, his name is the
Bull.
They're going much more wolf-like with that. And I read the novelization of that. Our friend of the show, Jonathan Mayberry, wrote the novelization for that thing. It's scary as hell. The movie is neat, but the thing is particularly terrifying. People were asking what the difference between like the Dogman and the werewolf or whatever was, and like in DA's universe, they're to a certain extent related. A dog soldier who goes down the dark path potentially becomes a Dogman and loses the ability to shift back into human form. I wouldn't be surprised if some of this is just all related. It kind of makes you wonder. It's so, I don't know. Maybe it is divergent evolution or whatever, but
I think Tex just hit on it. He said seeing the difference between a Dogman / werewolf and a Wolfman, and I think that's the distinction that because you hear the term Wolfman, you hear the term Dogman or werewolf, and I don't think they're synonymous with each other. I don't think that that's the same thing that people are seeing. I think the Dogman or werewolf that is more animal beast like, and a Wolfman would be more something like you'd see, like what they depicted in those earlier movies and in the remake.
And that was what Universal was asking him for. He wanted to do more of a werewolf, and they wanted him to do a Wolfman, and that's how we got the iconic Lon Chaney Jr. makeup, because it wasn't what Jack Pierce wanted at all.
Yeah.
But it was what they were asking for, and he worked for the studio, so he had.
Even Joe Dante changed what Rick Baker, because Rick Baker started off in The Howling. He was doing the effects on The Howling, and then Joe Dante wanted him for American Werewolf in London, or excuse me, not Joe Dante. Who directed American Werewolf in London? It just left me. Joe Dante directed The Howling. That's where he started, and then Rob Bottin finished up on that. But that was totally different from what you saw in American Werewolf in London. And I know somebody in the credits or in the chat will get it. But anyway, Baker and the director for American Werewolf in London they butted heads when they finally got together about what the wolf was supposed to look like. Baker wanted to do more of what he was doing on The Howling and more of a Wolfman type. And the director was like, no, I want this thing to be something totally different that we've never seen before. And you got what we got. It was 4 legs, more. I would look at that more like a hellhound than what you would say a traditional dogman or a werewolf would look like. Because I mean, that's
Well, it depends on the account. I mean, some of the Dogman accounts we've had, they have shifted from two-legged to four-legged.
Well, some of the Dogman accounts I've taken, people described them approaching on all fours, and then they hear a popping sound when they stand up. To me, that almost like it seems like they would be like changing the structure of their hands to unfold the fingers, almost like they pull their knuckles back like a gorilla does when it runs on its knuckles.
Yeah. Well, and the hips too, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that dogs aren't comfortable walking on their hind legs. It's because of where their hips are shaped.
Yep. It's just interesting when you start looking at all the different depictions. I mean, very rarely do you see the same morphology on any two werewolf movies. I mean, even if you follow the Howling series, the werewolves look different in every single movie, which obviously it all went downhill after the first one. But every single werewolf from the first one to the very last one, totally different. And they actually even went back to the one where it was I think it was 6, the Freaks, where it was vampire versus werewolf. They actually went to a more of a Wolfman type werewolf in that movie.
Yeah.
Was howling at the door trying to get in. It's ridiculous. I thought it was something one of y'all's and I realized it was by Marky. He's a knucklehead.
Silver Bullet's one of my all-time favorite werewolf movies.
Yep.
Silver Bullet's a great movie.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. I really can't believe that's the only werewolf thing that Stephen King's ever done. And it was just a novelette. I mean, there was so much more that could have. It was great, but there was just so much more he could have done with that.
Yeah. His stuff is just disturbing. I've been reading a lot of his books over the years, and I discovered him kind of late. When I was in junior high, all my friends were reading Stephen King, and I'm like, he just swears a lot. I don't really get what the deal is. And then several years ago, I finally started reading it. I think I was about 40. I'm like, yeah, I don't know where this was when I was reading earlier. I should have.
I think Silver Bullet is the only adaptation of Stephen King's that he wasn't in that movie. He's been in every other one of his movies in some other than maybe Christine. I can't remember if he was in Christine or not.
I don't think he was in the Shawshank Redemption either. Or if he is, I haven't seen him yet.
He wasn't in Stand By Me. There have been a lot of movies.
Well, I'm just talking about just his horror movies.
The horror movies,
cameo in his horror movies.
Yeah,
but he wasn't. You can watch. You can actually watch Silver Bullet on YouTube. I think last I checked, it was still on there as a free watch.
Yeah, that is one of my all-time favorites. I love that movie.
I mean, let's just Gary Busey is what really what makes that movie.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about the Siege at Lockett Ranch story? I've heard some people say that it's a legit story. I've heard other people say that Dark Waters just wrote that story and it's become kind of an urban legend. What do you guys think?
I don't know if it's legit. It's scary as hell.
It is.
I asked Dark Waters point blank, and he never really said.
So early on, I was really a big fan of Dark Waters, and he was in a big battle with another YouTuber that probably everyone's aware of, and they were shooting insults back and forth and accusations and whatnot. And in the process, he used an expression. Well, I'll tell you what the expression was. He referred to somebody as being retarded. And I understand that there's a certain level of retardation at which point you are no longer aware that you are, or it's not a big deal. But there is a higher level of that where that word is highly offensive. And I worked with people of that level as a job developer. And I'm telling these kids, well, they're not kids, they were adults that love this stuff. Oh, you need to watch this channel and you need to watch that channel. And so I just shot him a quiet message and I was like, I would, it bothers me that you use the word retarded. And I got blocked and I got a nasty letter back and the whole 9 yards. So I haven't really kept up with him after that. But during that time, he talked about his own experience in Taylor, Mississippi, that he went there and he had a guy take him down some of those roads where these things are supposed to have happened. And I thought that was actually more terrifying than the siege at Lockett Ranch. He was in the truck with the guy and they pulled over, and I don't know how or why he got out, but they were out of the truck and something was approaching, and then the guy panicked, jumped in the truck and took off without realizing that Dark Waters was in the vehicle with him. And it was I mean, to hear him tell that story, if the Lockett Ranch story isn't true, well, he did a really good job of convincing me that his own story was.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if Lockett Ranch is true or not. It's an amazing, unbelievable. I mean, it's fantastical. But at the same time, why would he go to Taylor, Mississippi in the first place if he didn't think he was going to go there to find something?
I think the siege of Lockett Ranch is true, because there seems to be so much Dogman activity in that area. Because if it is fiction, it's well placed fiction, because there is a ton of Dogman activity in that area. In fact, one of the best sighting reports I've gotten from that area was from a trucker who had pulled off onto an off ramp to rest for the night, and when he was crawling into his sleeper, he heard something hit the side of his truck, and he didn't think much of it. Then he heard something scraping on the side of his truck. So he gets up and looks out of the sleeper, out the window, and the doors were locked. And he looked out the driver's side and looked in the window and didn't see anything on the truck. He thought maybe somebody was sideswiping him. He looks out the passenger side and he sees this thing coming up the side of his truck. And he described it as a werewolf, is how he described it, trailing its claws down the side of the trailer.
Wow.
And he said he just had the feeling that if something was looking at him. So he turned his gaze from the mirror and looked straight out, and there was another one just a few feet off the shoulder staring right into the window. And he said it was looking him in the eye on a head-to-head level, and it was standing on the ground next to the truck. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with 18-wheelers. That window's pretty high off the ground.
It is.
Yes, they
That
are.
would put that thing easily 8 to 9 feet tall. And
Wow.
he decided that was a great time to fire the truck back up and sleep somewhere else.
Wise
Yep.
choice.
There you go.
But he said he had the feeling they were trying to get him out of the truck, get him to step out.
I heard a similar incident about that, about an ambulance crew that they typically ran calls. They were like stationed in a big or a bigger city, but they had to run calls out in this rural area, and they were running a call, and they had to stop for something, or something was crossing the road, and they described what was crossing the road as about 8 to 9 feet tall, and as the guy that was riding in the passenger seat was starting to get out to go see what it was, his partner said, "Hold on a second." And he cut all the lights on the outside of the truck. Well, when it did, this particular bus had the camera system on it that was all the way around. He said when he flipped those lights on, it flipped the camera on, and they looked. And while that one had got them stopped, they said there was 3 more coming up behind them, behind the ambulance. And
Wow.
had they not flipped the camera on, partner would have got out of the truck and probably got ambushed. By the
Wow.
other 3 that were coming up behind them. Said that was the last time that they ran calls out in that rural area. They said,
Sounds like Nick Valente said that night when we were talking about the video in Joe Bald. We were talking about seeing some eye shine and the figure behind that tree, and Nick said, "Well, if you saw that one, there were 3 more looking at you that you didn't see."
You know, one time I heard Bob Gimlin in an interview, and it's been years ago, and I've never been able to find it again. But they asked him why he didn't shoot at Patty, because he had the ability. And he said, because I didn't think I could get the other ones too. I've never been able to find that again where he said that. And it's the only time I ever heard him make that reference. But he implied that there were other Bigfoot there that he didn't think they could get away from. Yeah. So I think that whenever you see one of any kind of cryptid, look around you.
One of the things I've always felt when watching the Patterson Gimlin footage is the way it keeps looking back to see if he's still there. Like it's deliberately trying to keep his attention focused on it. Yeah. I've often wondered if it didn't have young hidden in the bushes nearby and she was trying to draw them away.
Yeah.
Kind of like a quail does.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely crossed my mind, especially after Gimlin said that. And I wish I could find that interview. I've never been able to find it again. I don't know what I was watching it on. It disappeared. But I know that's what he said. I absolutely know. The question was, why didn't you shoot at it? And he said, because I didn't think we could get the other ones. The other ones would get us before we got them. So, I think that anytime, possibly the only one that I would question, Gugways they seem to be a bit more loners than the others. But Dogman, if it's a dog, if it's canine, it's running in a pack.
I would agree.
Bigfoot, hominids and hominins tend to run in clans and families. I would question if you see one where the others are.
I think, especially in the early days before people had really even heard the term Dogman, that a lot of people didn't know how to describe what they were seeing. One of the account I'd read and were actually taken, I was talking to some folks that had an encounter down in War Eagle National Park, War Eagle State Park down in Arkansas, and they described being chased by what they thought was a werewolf. And I asked them to describe it, and when they started describing it, they said it, it was big and it was built like a Bigfoot, but it had a snout. And I'm like, wait a minute. I started to ask them, did you see pronounced ears? Did it have legs like a dog? They're like, no, it had feet like people, but it was just really massive and had this big snout. But we didn't see any ears. And I was like, I think that was a Gugwe. I don't think that was a werewolf or a Dogman at all. So I think a lot of people, when they see the snout, don't know what else to call it, especially if they're unfamiliar with the term Gugwe. So I think there may be a lot of cross-contamination between Gugwe sightings and Dogman sightings.
I agree with that. I also have to say that I love going to War Eagle Mill, but now I'm scared to go. Thanks, DA. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. War Eagle's a really neat place. It really is.
It is.
I like to go. Gugwe was until I read DA's books.
Yeah.
And then I wish I hadn't.
It's definitely a recent term for me too. I think probably in the last 3 or 4 years, I had never heard of them until just only in the last few years. So I don't think a lot of people, even people who are pretty well immersed in the community, really know what it is. And somebody asked me if I had seen the alleged true story of the Patterson Gimlin film, and the answer to that is that the name of a documentary? Because I don't think I have seen that.
There's a story going around, and I don't know if it's true or not. I've only heard it in a few places, that there was supposedly a group of hunters on the ground that day that killed several Bigfoot, including Patty, after they stopped filming. I don't know if it's true or not, and I have heard that story from a couple of different odd places, but I have yet to hear anybody with any actual firsthand knowledge of it.
that's something I'm going to have to research tonight and look up, see what I can find out about it. Or tomorrow, probably. But I wrote a couple of stories for Cameron Buckner's channel, and I won't waste a lot of time on it. But in the second one, I featured a Gugwe, and I really felt uncomfortable doing it because I didn't know enough. Here's the story behind those two stories. I was talking to Cameron on the phone one day and probably crying on his shoulder about something or other. I don't know. He's always been just the kind of guy that sits and listens, and you can tell at his end of the phone, he's like, oh, dear God, I'm stuck on the phone with a crazy woman. But he never says that out loud. So, as a crazy woman, I feel that gives me the right to keep talking. And he just put it out there. He says, sit down and write me a story. He said, make it at least so many thousand words. Don't go over this many thousand words. Just write me a story. I'll throw it up there and we'll see what happens with it. And over the next couple of days, I sat down and wrote The Hunted, and it got a lot more positive response than I expected. And a lot of people asked for a second version, a part 2. And I wanted it to be a little bit scarier than part 1. So I wrote that. But I really, I was tied for time, and I wanted to get them out there. And I really wish that I had studied Gugwe more, because it's one of those terms that I hear. I know what it is. I know the difference, but I really don't know as much about their, I haven't heard a whole lot of sighting or encounter stories where the person was sure they were looking at a Gugwe. And I really wish I'd had the opportunity to look those up more and learn more about them, because that's one that scares me. I mean, they all...
They're terrifying.
Yeah, they seem to be exceptionally aggressive. So,
and exceptionally large, too.
Yeah.
They're a beast of a critter.
Yeah. So, anyway, I don't know. I want to go down to War Eagle Mill or War Eagle. I always call it War Eagle Mill because that's where I go when I go there, and really take a look around from my car or an airplane. Helicopter would work. From 100 feet away or more, inside an armored vehicle. So, yeah. All right, guys. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, we all fall down. So I says to Mabel, I says,
do you guys think that Dogman and werewolves are the same thing, or do you think there's something different?
Personally, I think that werewolves I think that there are exceptions. I think that there are people who psychologically thought that they were lycanthropes and had the ability to change. But I think historically, anytime a werewolf was recorded in history, I think that it was actually a Dogman, and then they found the craziest person in town and tortured him into saying that they were a werewolf. I personally believe that 90% of the time that is the case. I don't have a whole lot to base that on. That is just my own, this is how I'm going to accept the reality of things kind of thing. And I would love to be proven wrong by that. So, you've got information that makes me say, hey, that can't be. I will go with it.
Eve, what about you? What do you think?
I'm more inclined to kind of go along with Neoma. I guess it kind of boils down to the whole Occam's razor that we always talk about. I think it's more possible that some type of parallel evolution occurred to create a bipedal, dog, as opposed to somebody who can, transmogrify into a dog back to a person again. If it does, it shifts the entire paradigm of my thinking. So I don't know if I want to go down that road. Um, I'm just again thinking just biologically and looking for the simplest explanation. Uh, it's terrifying to think of either way. Um, you know, Humans are kind of accustomed to being the top of the food chain, and when all of a sudden you're not, that adds a whole level of discomfort.
Anti-Venom just put up or made a logical or a valid argument, and that is that the salves that they used were hallucinogenic. And I mean, I'm sure the belts weren't, but there may have been something in the belts, or
Sure.
there are a lot of things that were supposedly made you be able to turn into a werewolf that may not have had that, but certainly the salves could have definitely been hallucinogenic.
Sure. Well, and lycanthropy is a recognized mental illness too.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
Good night, Papa Bear. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just, until somebody proves to me that a skeleton can do that, make that drastic of a change. Yay, Carter. I'm sorry. I'm a Chiefs fan. I can't help myself. Yeah.
I kind of agree with that. I think that blaming people for the acts of Dogman was a much easier way to go for people to understand than admitting that there was this race of monsters out there. I think that there are people that have thought they were werewolves, but I think that Dogman and werewolf, personally, I just think they're one and the same. I don't really think there's a difference. And I agree with Neoma. I find the idea of them shifting forms. Um, I kind of categorize that almost with the woo. I mean, not quite, but in that same vein. It's not that I don't think it can happen. It's just not something I've experienced. And if it was a case of, is it a werewolf? Would they be able to transfer during broad daylight? And my Dogman sighting was in broad daylight. It was 10:30 in the morning. Nick had Nick Valente with me as well, so there was two of us that saw it broad daylight, and it didn't change form. It was just that. So I think it's just that's the way they are all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I can give you the definition, the difference in the definition of the two words, which makes them two different things. But I think what people have called werewolves for centuries have been Dogmen, period. I think of the worst book I ever read. It was a great book, but man, it scarred me psychologically. I was about, 18, 19 years old when I read it. It was Lord of the Flies. And the lesson we all learn from Lord of the Flies is you may not elect a leader, you may not find a solution, but you will find a scapegoat. And I think that where werewolves are concerned, they always were able to find a scapegoat. And I was the craziest person in town, the person that would be most easily convinced that they were able to change into a wolf and kill people. I also think that there were serial killers throughout history, because serial killing is not as a 20th century crime as people like to think, who, they're already mentally unstable, and possibly to increase their legend or whatever may have said that they were, I was changing into a wolf when I did this. just to add to their own legend. And I think that may have been the case a few times too.
Or they're going for the insanity defense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Are you guys familiar with the Beast of Seven Shoots?
Oh, definitely.
I don't know that one. That's new
The
to me.
Beast of Seven Shoots is a fairly famous photograph that's made its way around. It's pretty grainy. There's an area that's called the Seven Shoots. I'm not right. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly where it's at. I want to say it's in Canada, but I could be wrong about that. These people at this park, their dog went missing, and there were people going around looking for it. And it was a small dog, about the size of Kenai. And these people were looking around it, and there was one guy who was just snapping pictures, and he took this picture, which is largely believed to be a picture, one of the few existing photographs of an actual Gugwe. I'll let you guys be the judge whether or not you think it is what we think it is. But it's a pretty grainy photo. But you can see it's holding what looks to be a small white dog in its hand. I'll zoom it in just a little bit. And up here, you can see the snout and the eye ridges. And this is believed to be probably the best existing photo of what they believe to be a Gugwe. And that does very much look like a baboon snout.
Mm-hmm.
Irish, you can tell. Yeah, very mandrill looking, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It does.
What do y'all think?
Got himself a Kenai there.
Yeah. And there was a small white dog that was a couple who had been looking for. Someone said that it could also be a small deer. Easily, yeah, it could be a small deer. But it was kind of coincidental that they got this picture of it. It's holding something small and light colored. And these people were just absolutely tearing up the area looking for their missing dog, which was about that size.
Yeah.
Well, it's
I can see where you could say that, but it's definitely primate. But to me, with that snout, it looks more mandrill like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's believed to be the best photograph ever taken of a Gugwe. But that certainly matches the description of what we know to be the Gugwe.
It is, to be fair, that's a really good blow up of the photo. But in the real picture, that thing was actually quite a ways away. So that's actually quite a good detail that they were able to bring up in that photo.
Yeah,
because the guy didn't even see it when he took the original picture. He found that later.
Right. It wasn't until quite a while later that he discovered it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we've got, give me a second to bring this one up. This was not intended to be, it was called, in the movie, they called it an Neoma. But this is from the movie Primal Rage. And to me, this is probably the best interpretation of a Gugwe that I've ever even heard of. To me, when I think Gugwe, this is what I think.
Wow. Yeah, that do me in.
That thing is absolutely terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do a side-by-side comparison of that with the Beast of Seven Shoots, and you can see a lot of similarities in that head structure.
Can you bring them up together?
I would have to crop the images together. It might take me a couple minutes.
Well, it's not a big deal. I just thought it'd be interesting to look at them side by side. Anyway, I really wish that I knew more about Gugwe, because that is the one animal that just really does. I think Dogman used to really scare me until I saw what I think was a Dogman. Something about the reality of it being there. It's like, okay, well, it's there. I can accept that.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Another angle from the same movie. And you can definitely see why they would call it a face eater.
Yeah. Oh, what's that actor's name? The oh, I just had it and I lost it. Darn it! I hate that. What did you call me again earlier, Steve?
What did I call you?
Yeah.
Um,
Chronologically gifted.
oh yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, my chronological gifting is coming through.
I was gonna say you're asking the wrong person. I'm pushing through a couple drinks into this evening, so I don't know what to tell you.
Oh, well, no, it's not Lance Henriksen, although I do love Lance Henriksen. He's one of my favorites. Some of the best moments in Bigfoot movies involve Lance Henriksen.
He's awesome.
Mhm. He tells the great story about and I don't remember which one it is, but in one of the Bigfoot movies, he tells a story about the guy with the super glue on the rhinoceros's backside.
That would be abominable.
Is that what you? Yeah, I love that.
Yep.
It's my favorite story.
You know, I always get myself kind of hung up philosophically when I'm trying to ask myself, do these creatures exist? And then I always have to remind myself about what does exist. I mean, if you're only experienced with, life in the world with things like dogs and cats and deer or whatever, and then you see a hippo or a rhinoceros or a giraffe, you're like, that's so far off of everything else.
I think the one animal that opened my eyes to all other things being possible is the platypus.
That is true.
That's the one that's like, well, if that can exist, and
Mammal, it lays eggs, and it's venomous.
Yeah, and it's venomous,
and it's a mammal.
And
that's
it's a
why
mammal.
I told myself that God has a sense of humor.
Yeah, because,
he does.
I actually thought for a minute God may be a heavy drinker. I wasn't sure.
Joseph Schramm says the government admits UFOs are real. How long until they admit these creatures are real? I think they've been doing soft disclosures for a while, just very slowly admitting certain things. I don't think there's ever going to be a big reveal aha moment, but I think at some point they're going to release enough information where they'll just be like, well, we've been telling you this for years.
I think they're testing the water at this point.
I agree.
It's like, oh, well, there was a mass panic. Okay, let's try the next level. Oh, we're still good.
Yeah.
Well, boys and girls, we are after the 2-hour mark. We should probably start talking about our affiliates and start wrapping things up for the night.
Probably a good idea. And we mostly stayed on topic, so.
No, we wandered for a while.
Yeah, we went down to South America.
Well,
talked about, the face peelers and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No problem. We do that. We do it all. We do that all the time.
I
don't think there's been a show yet where we 100% stayed on topic.
My favorite quote is still, topic? What topic? We don't need no stinking topic.
Pretty much.
I thought I was going to get a t-shirt of that.
We definitely need to do that. Well, since Doc's not here, how about we let the little guy talk for himself about a Dark Angel Medical? Let's have a little message from old Doc himself.
Hey, everybody. This is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with D.A. Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And folks, remember, they have the Kit for Life guarantee. If you ever use your kit to save someone's life, they will replace that kit for free for life. If you go to Dark Angel Medical or use the link that is right here, you make sure you use discount code cryptid25 for 25% off your order. Again, don't forget about that Kit for Life guarantee, because you're definitely buying what Doc refers to as birthdays in a box.
And it's not just someone, it's something. So you save that Bigfoot's life, you will get your kit replaced.
That's right. But especially in the uncertain times we're in, and if you spend any time outdoors, whether you're cryptid hunting, hiking, fishing, backpacking, camping, if you're away from basic 911 services, you have to have a medical kit. Uh, Even if it's just basic first aid, when you're off the beaten path and miles away from help, even minor injuries can turn major in a hurry. So again, go by Dark Angel Medical, let them know we sent you, and don't forget to use discount code Cryptid25 for 25% off your order. And on checkout on notes, if you put in Team Odin or codename Wild Hunt, you can get a little Team Odin rocker that goes on the Velcro on your kit. So hopefully you'll check them out. Robbie, you want to tell us a little bit about Scallywag?
Yes, sir. Scallywag Tactical, another one of our affiliates, make some of the best fixed blade folder, fishing, hunting, kitchen, and just about any kind of knives that you could imagine. We all have their knives. They're great. If you're familiar with DA's books, you've read DA's books, you've heard the knives used, the Gunner's Mate, the Bounty, Privateer, all those knives are featured in the book. That's the Gunner's Mate that DA's got. This is the Jolly Roger. That's the Privateer. And Neoma's got the scissors.
Take her anywhere.
Scallywag is a veteran-owned company. Craig does an amazing job with his. That's the Orca that Steve's holding up right there. He just held up the Bad Fish. That's the fillet knife. Go check him out. There's a section called Blemish Blades. That's where this one came from. This knife retails for $45. I got it for $15 because the box was messed up. So go put you a couple of good knives in your cart, and then when you go to checkout, put code DA Roberts 10, get you an extra 10% off that, and because it's a stackable deal, it'll stack up. And I dare you, I've said it plenty of times, I dare you to go find a knife at any Cabela's or Gander Mountain or Sportsman's Warehouse or any of those places that sell $200, $300, $400 knives. I've had Spyderco, had Kershaw. I carried Kershaw every day till I got these. These retired my Kershaws. They sit on my dresser. None of those knives, some of them might be as good, maybe, but you're going to pay 3 times for them what you're going to pay for these, but they're not better. These for the money, this is one of the best folding knives that you'll be able to get.
Well, they don't have to be ridiculous either. I mean, this is the mini jack. Yeah, I work in a hospital. I carry this every day just so I can open boxes. You don't have to have a Rambo knife.
And I mean, ease of opening. I mean, you can't get much easier to open, and still razor sharp. I've had this knife almost a year, and it'll still cut you 3 days or 3 ways. And I know Doc's not here, but Steve, do you know what those 3 ways are?
Was that long, deep, and continuous? Was that how he phrases it?
There you go. See, Steve, you fill in beautifully for Doc.
Well,
you're a little bit taller than him, but you got the line down.
It don't take much.
I'm a little taller, not quite as badass, but I do my best.
So, and like I said, when you cut yourself on these, if you've already went and got yourself your Dark Angel medical kit, you'll be able to take care of yourself after you cut yourself with your Scallywag knife. Because trust me, I've done it plenty of times already.
I have too.
Yeah,
DA's given us a demonstration.
Yes, I did.
Me and DA are both
bled
in that
like
club.
a son of a gun.
Yeah.
Me and DA are both in that club because when I don't know if you was watching that night, Neoma, when I was in Ocala, I was getting ready to do my little thing, and I flipped it open and it kind of fell out of my hand. And I, like a dummy, went and caught it, and I bled the rest of the show.
Yep.
So DA and I are in that club of cutting ourselves with our Scallywag knives on camera.
Easy to do.
Yeah. So go give them tell them we sent you. Use code DA Roberts 10 at checkout. Get yourself 10% off. Like I said, I dare you to go find a better knife for this price because you're not going to do it. Walmart just had a big thing that they're selling these German knives with these Os 8 steel, which is, Steve, you're more metallurgically inclined than I am. I don't understand. I know D2 and all that stuff. Sure. This Os 8's newest, or it's a newer thing. I don't really know a whole lot about it, but it's is that surgical stainless steel? Is that what that
I
is?
think it's supposed to be, but surgical stainless is not marketed for keeping an edge. It's marketed for being able to be sterilized. It's non-porous. You want something to keep an edge. You want something like that D2 steel. I mean, that D2
Tool
stuff,
steel.
they make tool dies out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that they smash metal around to make other pieces of metal. That's some good stuff. It's hard as could be. It's brittle, but it's hard.
Yeah, that when you start getting into the case hardening and the Rockwell scale and stuff like that, that's a whole nother level of stuff that you have to know to understand what all that means. But short story, like I said, you're not going to pay $300 for a Spyderco and it'd be better than this $15 Jolly Roger that I got. It might be as good, but I'll carry this even at the $45 price point. I'll carry this all day long over a Spyderco, which Spyderco is cool. It's a brand name. But it's like DA says all the time. It's all about numbers for them. It's a big box brand.
It's marketing and name recognition.
Yeah, you buy a knife from them, they could care less if you say, well, this knife came dull or it broke off. They could care less if you never buy another knife from them again. Craig cares about his customers. Steve tells that story about his all the time. So,
yeah. My privateer, when I bought it, I used it like I use most of my cheap knives, and I was digging a jam staple out of a stapler. I snapped the tip off of it, and it was an eighth of an inch of the knife. It wasn't anything crazy. Of course, I felt like a complete idiot because I had the knife like a week, and being who he is, Craig, pointed out the stupidity of my ways, but then he explained to me why it was. And then he told me to send it back to him, and they put a new edge on it. And, he did not disappoint. I've learned my lesson, but, it's got a good edge and does the trick. And, I don't pry staples open with it. But,
that's an awful big tool to be prying staples with.
I'm an Eagle Scout. I've always got a knife on me. And, a pocket knife is your tool for damn near everything. My wife sent me some leftovers to work the other night, and all we had was plastic silverware, and I was trying to cut this piece of, Salisbury steak that she'd made with a, plastic cutlery that had no edge on it. Needless to say, it didn't go very far. So I'm sitting there, I took my mini jack out and I washed it in the sink, and then started cutting my steak open with them. One of my coworkers comes in, I'm like, "Are you cutting your steak with your pocket knife?" I'm like, shut the hell up. I'm hungry and it's sharp.
It worked.
It worked.
Does
It worked
the
well.
trick.
Can I just put in one quick call out, I guess?
Sure.
If you're still in the chat and you haven't done it yet, please go over and subscribe to Blondes and Booze. I'll never get their name right. They really are worth watching, guys.
They are awesome.
They truly are.
Well, and let's not forget Brock either.
Yeah. Our other affiliate is
haircut.
Ken Brock with BrockBlades.com. Doc's not here to show off his collection of Brock blades, but I've got mine. This is the Skane Dew. It means black blade. It was a holdout blade that the Scottish Highlanders kept in their sock. Ken Brock makes all his blades by hand, whereas all of the Scallywag blades are awesome knives, but they are mass produced. If you buy two Gunner's Mates, they're going to be identical. But every blade Ken makes is unique. The handle will be different. The forging might be slightly different, but he makes all of his by hand. And if you know anybody that's an outdoorsman or a first responder, the gift of a custom knife is a treasured gift. And these aren't just made for looking, sitting on a shelf and looking pretty either. These are functional blades, and they're wicked sharp, and they are made with good steel. So definitely check out Ken Brock, BrockBlades.com. And if you use discount code on checkout, Cryptid10, you'll get 10% off your order. And if you order a custom knife, when you're in the description, if you mention that you heard about the Brock Blades from this show, he'll still give you the 10% off. So definitely check out BrockBlades.com because he makes some absolutely fantastic knives.
Well,
folks, one of the reasons we choose the affiliates that we have is because all three of those companies are veteran and first responder owned. We're big supporters here. What's that?
I said, he beat me to the punch. We don't pick our affiliates lightly. They're all
Right.
veteran-owned companies.
We're proud supporters of our first responders and our military and law enforcement. Yeah, the men and women who serve and protect us. So we're proud to support these companies. And like Robbie was saying, the big box chains, you're just a number. But these small businesses, every sale counts, and we're proud to be partners with these great companies and hoping that they will see a tremendous amount of success. So we definitely all say our prayers and be grateful for these men and women in uniform. Robbie's an active cop. I'm a retired cop. Steve was a cop for a while, but now he's a nurse, and they see some pretty horrific stuff. Remember, we got one of the things that we always talk about too is the 22 a day foundation and how we lose 22 veterans a day to suicide. That also, that is a specific. The 22 of 8 Day Foundation is specifically talking about veterans, but we also see a deal of that among first responders as well, because these folks see things that you can only barely imagine. There's a quote from Edmund Burke that I like to say. People sleep safely in their beds at night only because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. Well, these men and women in uniform are those rough men, those rough people who keep us safe. But the consequence of that is they see some horrific things in the course of their duties, and it takes a toll on every one of them. And definitely keep them all in your thoughts and prayers. And if you know anybody in your family, friends, even acquaintances that are first responders in any capacity, or a veteran or a current military, make sure you check in on them once in a while. Shoot them a text. Just let them know you're thinking about them, because you might be the one thing that keeps them off the edge that day. And let's see that 22 a day get down to 0 a day.
All you need is that one person.
Exactly. Hey, we all have our demons, but make sure you're reaching out and letting those you care about know you love them, and that you're thinking of them, and that they don't have to face these demons alone. That you'll be there, happy to listen or to lift a glass and just be there. So let's get 22 a day down to 0. And let's be thankful for the men and women that put themselves in harm's way, so that we can all be safe at home at night. And I thank each and every one of them. We've been ending the show here lately with a toast, and it's something I want to keep continuing. Everybody got a glass of something. It doesn't matter if it's water or what have you, but everybody grab a glass. And there's a quote I like to add. And I've been saying it for the last dozen or so episodes, and I'm probably going to keep doing it. It's from an old Irish song. I love the song. It's a fantastic song, very haunting. It's called "The Parting Glass," and I'll leave you guys with this quote from "The Parting Glass." So fell to me. Oh no, wait, I'm sorry, the wrong part of that. But since it fell unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night, and joy be to you all. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DAX Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.